Hello everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to this week's live training. And sometimes we do a little mix of Q&A and different aspects. We're focusing on one today, guys. We're talking about the risks associated with rent-to-rent. I want to really drill down on this topic, and it'll be a nice short one, 15-20 minutes max today. The risks associated with rent-to-rent. And guys, I'll want to share my experience. I think my first rent-to-rent was back in 2002. Since then, I tried to add it up. I'm going to round it to 100. I'm going to round it to 100. 100 rent-to-rent deals I've personally been involved in. That's well over 20 years. We did lots back in the early days, and lots of contracts with airports, construction companies. So 100 myself, the management company, Pillow Partners, I think we added it up to more than 400. But if we make that nice round figure of rent-to-rent deals I've been involved in as 500 is a conservative, fair estimate. Hopefully that gives you guys a trust that I'm in a position to talk about rent-to-rents. Now, we're talking about the risks associated with rent-to-rents here, guys. And this isn't bashing the rent-to-rent industry. It's not talking about rent-to-rent deal sources. Nothing negative here, but what I do want is for you guys to do rent-to-rents with your eyes open about the potential risks. Now, we don't sell rent-to-rents or do any deal sourcing, so our kind of agnostic. We're not here to sell you anything. So I can offer advice. And again, there's very few people who've been involved in 500 rent-to-rent deals over 2 decades. So I want you guys to get some good information here. Again, it's a positive thing in the industry. Lots of people making fantastic gains in rent-to-rents. There's lots of amazing people training on rent-to-rents that have walk to walk, and there's lots of amazing deal sources there. But if you're just listening to the market and listening to noise, listening to all the bullshit that's out there, guys, there's lots of people getting bummed. And in 15-20 minutes, I can hopefully let you go into it with your eyes open about some of the risks associated with this. So guys, let's jump in with the first question. So one of the risks associated with rent-to-rents is a shit deal. And I don't excuse my language there. Why do I say shit deal? I've seen so many. As I had said, we've maybe managed 400 over the time I've had a management business. 300 of those have not been good deals. 100 have been great deals. 100 of those 400 have been really, really shit deals, and half have been shit deals. So I'm using profanity there, guys, because it's just true. Half the rent-to-rent deals out there, guys, are not worth it. So let me tell you something. I've not got my phone to do the figures here. If you're seeing a rent-to-rent deal that's going to cash flow you $5,000 a month, and somebody's selling you that for 5K, nobody in the history of the world or the future of the world is ever going to sell a deal net cash flow in 5K a month, hands off, because deal sources will link you with an agent, and an agent like Pillow will manage that totally hands off. There's nobody ever sold if you've got a deal that cash flows $5,000 a month, that's 60 grand a year over a 5-year period. That's over $500,000, about 300 grand. Nobody's selling you a deal where you don't need to do anything for $5,000 to make, because the deal sourcer would keep it. The deal sourcer would keep that and make 300 grand, £295,000 more. They're not going to sell a deal that net cash flows $5,000 a month. Hands off, residual income for $5,000. Does that make sense? So when you see these deals blasting out, well, if you pay me 5-10 grand, this deal will churn off $5,000 a month profit. If a deal sourcer came across a deal like that, fully hands off, they would do it themselves. That makes sense? So shit deals here is a number of things, really badly poor written contracts, deals that don't stack up for the profit and loss or cash flow, their projections, and bad contract terms, guys, properties that should not be serviced accommodation, that should be buy-to-lets, they should stick to being traditional buy-to-lets. So a shit deal can make many, many things, but most of them are nonsense. Most of them are never going to achieve the figures. There's costs missing. They're in the wrong places, and they're just never, ever going to work as deals. And the really, really good deals, deal sources, if it's $5,000 a month, hands off, residual income, a deal source is not selling it for $5,000. We need to be realistic here, because they earn £300,000, if my maths are correct, 300 grand over a 5-year period for not doing anything to a deal. Just they're selling to you for $5,000 and they're losing 295. So we need to be realistic here, guys. So that deal needs to stack up, and it doesn't matter how bad that deal is. you're never going to get the returns from the property. The next risk associated with rent-to-rent is poor and vague contract terms. So this is a big one that's going to trip you up. Might seem a good deal, by the way, the numbers might stack, you might be getting it below market value, all these things are amazing, but who's responsible for the repairs and what level of repairs? I've seen contracts that are, well, this is a commercial lease, so it's fully insuring and repairing. You've got people paying £600-700 a month for a rent-to-rent deal with contracts that are fully insuring and repairing, meaning they have to insure the place, they have to pay for boilers and roofs. Guys, this is just dangerous. It's foolish. So landlords may think this is a commercial lease because it's commercial terms and not under AST or a PRT in Scotland. But guys, we're not entering commercial leases as such for commercial buildings. We're just doing different rent-to-rent agreements, guaranteed rent, corporate lets, whatever you want to call it. But you need to be very, very specific about who's paying for these repairs. Guys, how do we exit? What condition do we get the property back in? So again, it's different if you take a commercial unit and kit it out and spend £100,000 kitting it out as a cost and then decide not to do it. You have to reinstate that back. So you don't want to be doing loads of repairs and upgrades to a property, and then you have to pay the landlord 10 grand to put it back to being a shithole. Trust me, that I've seen that happens with commercial units. And if your landlord is in some belief that this is a commercial lease, they'll be wanting you to reinstate that back. So you may have made improvements. Who's doing the repairs? Who's doing the annual gas safety checks? Who's sorting the big issues? And guys, you can't cover everything here. My position in this, if I was doing rent-to-rent agreements, is you can have solicitors involved, big chunky agreements, 50, 60 pages worth. It's sometimes just good to get a nice, quick agreement, 2 pages worth, but they're pretty vague. And unless if it goes wrong, guys, you're going to be stuck with battling on terms in court and people saying you've not honoured your lease agreement. So you need to be clear on everything in there. So there is a balance. Again, I'm there for short contracts, not involving solicitors, because if you want to get a solid rent-to-rent agreement in place, you get a solicitor to do it, their solicitor's acting. Those solicitors will phone each other and simply say, we're going to rip as much money out of these 2 clients as possible. We're just going to go back and forth for as long as possible. I'll fight that corner, you fight their corner, and we'll get this into thousands of pounds, because I'm not going to sign off on that where they'll make it £200 each. Your solicitors are going to jump in, phone each other and say, we can make a lot of money off these mugs. Let's go back and forth for months, protecting each other's clients. Now, I'm exaggerating there to prove a little bit of a point. They may not phone each other up, but there's unwritten rules. They're never going to just take £100 for a document. They're there to protect you. It's never ending what they would do for you. The opposition solicitors, never ending what they would do for their client. You could be there for a year, you could rack up thousands of pounds before you ever get an agreement. So there's a little bit of a compromise on both sides. But guys, you need to be clear on what these big things, the risks, this is what we're talking about, the risks. If that boiler breaks, or doors or windows need replaced, or the roof needs replaced, or there's rot, guys, to keep that property operational, to keep that worthy hotel quality for your guests to check in, you're not going to really have an option but to go and fix the boiler. Otherwise, you can't make money. Otherwise, you're going to get bad reviews. So can you claim that money back off the rent? And it's not until these things happen and you get caught out that you think, I should have thought of that. So guys, always be very, very clear in the contract terms of what happens when things go wrong and who's responsible for what you're responsible for, what is the landlord responsible for. You can save yourself thousands or even tens of thousands. Next risk associated with rent-to-rent is a landlord's change in circumstances. So this is something that hopefully will never happen, but remember, if a landlord's doing a rent-to-rent with you, it's under the basis that he can legally do that and it suits him at that time. Let's say you've got a 5-year agreement. Now, his mortgage company takes the consent to let back. He's not got the right mortgage and they find out, that deal's going to get pulled. He's going to take that property off you. If they got a new mortgage and that new mortgage with another bank, a better interest rate, says, well, you can't rent that out under short term, that might mean that they take that property back. And I always say, well, I've got a good relationship. The landlord's not going to do it because it's a good deal. Let me ask you this. If a landlord's daughter was going to be homeless, his 18-year-old daughter with a young baby was going to be homeless, and the options were taking that property off you to put his own family members in, or them in a homeless hospital, a homeless hospice, a homelessness shelter, or putting a roof over his own family's head, he's going to pick that. Because guys, if you don't think they would, I ask you, if you were in that position, you had a rent-to-rent with me or someone else, and your daughter or your son was homeless, or something happened to one of your family members, or your sister or something, you would always have family first, as rightly well you should, guys. So if something happens to the landlord's circumstances, he needs to sell that to get access to money. He's going bankrupt, or he doesn't pay his mortgage and the bank takes it. All these things can affect you negatively, meaning you've shelled out for 10 grand to get your furniture look nice. You've got lots of future bookings. You've put money into marketing. You've got people going to networking. You've all these things in place for the property, and that changes and that deal needs to be pulled. So a landlord has the power to do that, guys. You need to then go to court to get breach of contract, and that's a long, expensive process. And if you don't have a solid rent-to-rent agreement, or the mortgage company won't let them do it and they're breaking the law for some way, you're never going to get that through court. So if the landlord does pull the property, you need to think, am I going to get them for breach of contract and sue them for damages for future earnings? And in most cases, you're not going to do it. It's going to be too expensive, it's going to take up too much of your brain space, and the opportunity cost of that's going to take you away from building your portfolio. Next question, the risks associated with rent-to-rent. Neighbour sabotaging. Guys, this happens all the time. You can have a great deal terms, you can have great landlords, you've got a great relationship, you've got the best deal in the world, it's making money, and then neighbours don't like it. They're contacting your guests, they're contacting the council, they're CCing 20 people in, guys. I've been there 20 years, I've done this. Not just with rent-to-rents, guys. This applies to all properties. We've had great properties, again, a great management company. We care about the neighbours, we care about the guests, we care about the hosts, but some neighbours just detest it, and they will not let you operate. They're painting stuff indoors, they're gluing key boxes, they're reporting to the council, they're turning up with reporters. All these things can happen, guys, no matter how strong a contract you have. And everything's amazing in place, you're making money. If new neighbours move in and decide they're just going to ruin your business, they will do that, and it's going to be very hard. You can fight it, you can go to court, you can do all this. But guys, if they're turning up, shouting and bawling at your neighbours, gluing key boxes, putting notices in your door, giving you bad reviews, just all these things, guys, it's a nightmare. We've seen so many of this over the years. Some people just hate it. No matter how good a host you are, no matter how perfect your guests are, guys, neighbours doing this can absolutely sabotage your business, especially in Scotland where there's licensing. You need to get these licenses renewed, and if you get a license for 3 years, you need to, and the next time that needs to be renewed, you need to fight your case. And if neighbours have evidence that your guests are pissing about and parking in their space or causing noise, you won't get your license renewed. And if you don't have your license, you don't have a business. And if this comes in England, as we record this, it will be, you might watch this back in a year's time, licensing will be in, regulation will be in. So neighbours are a massive consideration. So guys, this is a risk. Not just the neighbours you have in place, because you can build good terms with them. You can say, I'm going to cut your grass, I'm going to clean your gutters, I'm going to do your windows, I'm going to do mine. You can build great relationships and actually add value to your neighbours, but not new neighbours coming in. You do not know what's going to happen there. Make sense? Next risk associated with rent-to-rent, and that is not factoring in all the startup costs. So people will do these cash flow projections. We get sent them all the time. Yeah, it's going to cash flow £5 grand a month, or £1,000 a month. Let's say £1,000, but they've only put like one clean in at 80 quid, when that's not the case. For ongoing stuff, they've not factored in that they have to pay some rent in advance, they have to pay furniture, you have to pay a sourcing fee. So yes, these are one-off costs that don't affect your monthly profit and loss, your monthly cash flow projections. But when you say, right, I have to put £5 grand for furnishing, I have to pay a £5 grand sourcing fee, I have to pay 2 months rent as a deposit, 3 months rent in advance, you could, let's say 10 grand, and then you'll get the deposit back, hopefully. But if all your setup costs to buy all the bits and bobs to get the things you need in place and refurb the property, if you average that out over the length of the contract, it could be £100 a month, and that's taken away from your margin. So these startup costs can rack up. Guys, I know when I first started, I thought I'd kitted a property out amazingly well, and then I had to go and get other sets, a third set of linen. I had to go and get things like serving dishes and all the things I didn't really realise people needed, like families needed, like colanders and stuff. And as a young single guy back in 2002 when I started, I just did not have a comprehension of how much it costs to kit out a property. And again, you need to figure out your target market, not just a blanket, I'm going to fill all the properties the same. Are you going for families? It's going to be large families where you need to kit it out for like 5 or 6 or 10 people staying in a property, so you're going to need lots of cutlery and plates and bedding. Is it going to be for contractors, high-end corporates, where you've got a nice comfy chair and a desk and a wireless printer and good Wi-Fi? So all these start-up costs, even blinds is a good one. We're doing a development for 70 properties in this, we'll end up managing, hopefully. They won't have blinds or window coverings, and they can be massively expensive. So these things we miss, and that's just natural. So make sure you are putting all your costs into your startup plans, and if it's costs that are big and chunky, you need to factor them out over the term of the rent-to-rent agreement. Lovely. Next risk associated with rent-to-rent is less income than projected. This is all about bookings, guys. So not to go into a bit deal sources again, but when we do our deal analysis, if we've been sold a deal sheet with projections and we're paying a professional to do these projections for us and market analysis because we're paying them, that's what we're paying my £5,000-10,000 for. These guys are the professionals. Hopefully get some figures from a professional agent. They might not be achieved. Not to say they're wrong. You might just not achieve that. The market might change. So the figures are probably 90% going to be inflated or given as a best estimate when deals are being sold, guys. I've seen so many, and it's just not anywhere close to what properties are currently achieving. Currently, there's properties that have operated for years there with dozens of 5-star reviews on Airbnb and Booking.com. Superhosts aren't getting those levels of occupancy and nightly rates, but a deal sourcer may be telling you, well, you're going to get X, and it's a new property into the market and it's lovely, but it doesn't even compare to the ones that are already on the market. So less income than projected. One, because we've maybe been missold. Number two, we've maybe been a little bit optimistic. Hi guys, we've done a course, we've done a 2-day course. Trust me, a webinar, a 2-day course is not enough to jump in and start operating serviced accommodation effectively. It's going to take time to get this. And finally, you might have achieved it. You might have achieved it for 2 years, and then the market shifts suddenly for various reasons, and we'll cover some of those next. But guys, your projections are just projections. Nice, easy one to do is COVID. Something might happen. Loads of things might happen. So that we can't really control. We can get our projections, we can get our business plan, we can forecast as best we can given the information we have at the moment and historically, and future put that forward. But guys, we can make best estimates, but we can't control the future. We can only do the best with the information we've got now. So be prepared. Keep some of your money behind. Be prepared for things to happen in the market. Like interest rates are going to change, and the government's going to absolutely destroy everything moving forward. Make no bones about it. Things are not going to get better all the time in business. The government's going to interfere and make it worse and harder for us. So that might lead to less income. Not been negative there, but these are the risks associated. If you're in a big business and you're a hotel chain, these are the types of risk analysis that you will be doing at various management levels. Lovely. The next risk associated with rent-to-rent, more ongoing costs than expected. So we covered the startup cost, now we're looking at ongoing costs. Well, things have went up massively. If we looked in the last few years, let's say a pub or a commercial kitchen, a restaurant, those type of things, energy bills were going up 5 times. Why? Because of net zero, and the government take all that money and give it to their pennies, give the money to their friends in big industry. There's a massive tax on this. It's not that electricity costs are going up, it's like the government's taking that money, taxing it and giving it to their friends with these big, massive companies. So guys, costs are always going to go up. They're very rarely going to go down. Electricity is a good thing of that. Costs expected, well, there's one that your local authority might double council tax for holiday homes. If you've not set up, they might put business rates up. They can do lots of different things, meaning you have more costs. Cleaning costs have went up for cleaners massively. The cleaners in my house, I think, have went up and put their prices up just because everything's gone up. The cost for employment went up. national insurance rose and all that for employers, and that means your suppliers will need to put their costs up as well. So costs will probably go up in time, guys, unless you've grown in rent-to-rent. This is a benefit of growing and scaling a rent-to-rent. Your costs will go down if you are scaling up, because you can get economies of scale, you can buy stuff cheaper, you can get bulk discounts, etc. But for your average rent-to-rent person with 1, 2, 3 properties, your costs may start going up. So we need to factor in a little bit of inflation. And I don't know if you've ever done rent-to-rent projections, you factoring in the inflation and the increased costs. You might have had a strategy of getting contractors in, guys, and thinking, well, I only need a clean a week or a clean every 2 weeks. But actually you found that your target market and your guests that are arriving in your properties aren't contractors or leisure guests, and you're getting 2 guests a week. Your cleaning costs have doubled, and cleaning costs doubling, guys, could wipe out all of your margin. So we need to be aware of these risks and try and plan for them. Have backup suppliers, those types of things. Next question, and the risks associated with rent-to-rents. New competition entering the market. We're looking at big developments, I think 70 in Birmingham, 2 blocks of 30 in Manchester. These are new build properties, and you go to Birmingham and they are blocks of apartments getting fired up everywhere. So you could be doing fantastically well in a block of apartments, could get planning permission, and it might affect your occupancy levels and price. So new competition coming into the market that can do it much cheaper. Guys, if you're doing a rent-to-rent versus someone that doesn't have a mortgage, that's got a property that's already set up and they can do it for cheap, they're maybe doing their own cleaning because they enjoy doing it, their costs are less, they can come in and get your market share. So new competition. If properties had to double, if supply had to double and demand stayed the same, essentially means that your occupancy levels will come down, your nightly rates will come down. Where there's more competition in the market, prices are going to go, because your guests have more choice. That's just supply and demand economics. So new competition into the market, you can predict that to a certain degree, but we don't know who's going to be popping up rent-to-rents next to us. And if you've got a lovely let's say a lovely apartment, but yet somebody's done a rent-to-rent in a block of 10 apartments next to you. All things considered, the apartment with 10 have economies of scale. They're going to be getting bigger bookings. They're going to be doing lots more different things to be more profitable than you with one. So new competition, something we can have in our risk analysis. We can prepare for as much as we can. But again, we're not relying on that not happening. We're being conscious of it. The next one for rent-to-rent risks, massive exposure at scale, guys. So this is the last one, because we've done well. We've covered all those other ones, the previous risks. None of them have affected. We've weathered the storm. We've built a business, guys. When you scale up to probably 4 units, you're going to be VAT registered, depending on the unit. 3 units, I've seen ones with 1 unit and they're instantly VAT registered in a year, adding 20% onto your costs, or making you less profitable when you discount it back. I think it's 16.67 or something if you make it VAT inclusive. So massive exposure when we start tacking on costs. I'm going to make it nice and simple for my brain. Each rent-to-rent unit you have is £1,000. So that's fine. But if you get 5 of those, that's £5,000 a month. Well, that's actually 60 grand a year that's on your balance sheet. That's there as a liability. You've got 60 grand worth of debt and contractual commitments. And if you do that over 5 years, what's that? 300 grand. So we need to start thinking as we scale up. I can't remember what year it was, but it was November, and I looked and I had £28,000 a month in rent-to-rent commitments going out, 28 grand a month. And I think it was 22 units back then, a long time ago. I had 28 grand a month. That was November. If I had continued all those, it was well before lockdown, but if I had that £28,000 a month exposure during lockdown, and I didn't negotiate some rent-free periods with my host, I would have not made 28 grand a month because it was lockdown. It was illegal to make money in the tourist areas. So there was a good chance that would have bankrupted me. I would have lost everything had I to have that commitment. So as you scale up, you need to be able to cover those rent-to-rent commitments. Remember, guys, if you've got one bad deal and you're known for not paying your rent and defaulting and breaking contract terms, that's going to go out into the market. People will hear about that. People love bitching and moaning and exposing people. People will have no problem screenshotting. Little scumbags will have no problem screenshotting your private conversations and putting them out there and telling everybody that you've defaulted in the rent, guys, especially in this community. Very bitchy. So be very careful about that. But you can't sign up for things. You can't scale a business up and then default in this. We need to be protect against that. Now, every business is a risk, and if it's a limited company, that's got limited exposure. That's what limited companies are for, guys. But the more your rent-to-rent commitments go up, and a little change in the market, I'm not saying lockdown, but something happening like a local authority interfering, a legislation change can lead you with hundreds of thousands of pounds a year to commit to, and you need to make that income, and that can be a very stressful position when your break-even point is £10,000 a month, and you have to sit and look at that calendar, guys, and think, 10 grand. If you've got one and you have to make £1,000 a month, that's the start of a fun business. That's a nice place to be, and you're getting £2,000 a month and making £1,000 margin. Brilliant. That's a great place to be. Maybe you've got £3,000 a month and you're making 6 grand and you're getting £3,000 margin. But if you have 10 grand a month to make and you're looking at your bookings and you've only got £8,000 in, that can be scary. You can start losing sleep. It doesn't become fun, and it becomes very, very stressful. And you start needing to put profits into some off-peak winter months. Now, hopefully that won't happen to you guys. Hopefully you'll all have great occupancy, have great success in your rent-to-rents. But as you scale up and then you're putting zeros onto your commitments every month, that can actually be scary. Make it not fun. And we need to be very aware of that. The risks become bigger and compounded when we scale up. I always say business people, entrepreneurs always have problems, and my problems have changed over the last 20 years. They've just every so often got an extra zero in the end. Whereas I used to worry about thousands of pounds to make payroll, and then it went to tens of thousands of pounds to make payroll, and we'll get a business the size of Pillow a few years ago. We're like, well, we need to be breaking even at £100,000 a month just to break even, and big massive businesses are in the millions and millions a month just to break even. So with growth and scale comes more exposure and more zeros in the end of that. Beautiful, guys. I've covered about 10 questions there. Thank you. I wanted to make it 20 minutes. We're just at 25. So thank you very much. Just wanted to share some knowledge, some things to think about. This isn't telling people not to do it. Certainly not criticising anybody in the industry. There's some amazing people there, some amazing deals. I see deals daily that are fantastic, but I also see deals and I also see people jumping into things that haven't thought of these risks. Go into everything with your eyes open. Get some education, do some research. By the way, there's unlimited free information out there. Get some second opinions. Should always be in various property communities. Have a trusted agent that you work with, or have mentors or people around you that can check these deals and stop you getting into things, and go in with your eyes open. Have a great Friday, guys. Have a great weekend. See you on the